besides a 22-year-old Larry Merchant, who would you like to see Mayweather fight in these next two fights?
I personally would like to see him at some point fight Keith Thurman. That's the fight I would love to see the last fight be with him if he gets by whoever his next opponent is. Part of the problem is of course, we'd all like to see him fight Pacquiao just for the sake of having him fight Pacquiao, but that's probably not going to happen. And I'd like to see him fight Pacquiao for one simple reason. It would get the mainstream media off boxing's back, because boxing has made, for the most part, really great matches in the last 4 or 5 years. But the one that got away was Pacquiao and Mayweather, and so when the mainstream media talks about the sport, they use that as an example. So it would get that off the backs of boxing, and fans want to see it. Even at this point, they'd still like to see it, but that's probably not going to happen. So the one person before he retires I'd like to see him fight is Keith Thurman. I think Keith Thurman is the future of the welterweight division, and could be one of the most dynamic fighters in the sport over the next 5, 6, 7 years.
Right. You said he needs a set-up fight for that. And I don't think Mayweather would go in the ring with Thurman. I think he's going to take...
Well, he probably won't. I mean, maybe not. It's a high-risk, low-reward kind of a thing at this juncture. Keith Thurman needs that one fight. I do think he needs a fight against a better welterweight leading into that. But the problem is nobody wants to fight Keith Thurman. Nobody's too anxious to step in the ring with him. Beyond that, it's hard, of course we'd like to see him fight Pacquiao. Part of it is, with boxing, you don't, split between promoters and all the rest. There's some people are not available to him. Of the people that are available to him, I guess I think it's more likely. It's just a guess. I have no idea, but I'm thinking Khan will be in the picture at some point. And some people think that's interesting because Khan is a pure boxer, and he hasn't fought a pure boxer in a long time. And maybe that's the other. Maybe since nobody's been able to pressure him well and get the job done, maybe it's the boxer type that will do well. I don't know.
Yes, it's hard to say. Mayweather hasn't ducked people. You can say Pacquiao. I just feel like there hasn't been that fighter to go after him in this era in the last.
Well, there are some people that I think he could have fought. He could have fought Paul Williams at a certain point. Could have fought Margarito at a certain point when Margarito was. He could have fought Cotto earlier. Could have fought Mosley earlier. That some people say, well, maybe that's nitpicking. Maybe it is. But I think there were. It's kind of like Roy Jones during his era, and the irony is Roy Jones fought a tougher schedule later in his career when he was less equipped to handle it, and that's why he had all those losses with Johnson and Tarver. Before that, his schedule wasn't too rough. He did when he needed to as a middleweight. He fought James Toney in the mega fight, and that didn't turn out very good because of Toney. But I think in some ways the Mayweather legacy, for all the champions and ex-champions he's fought, people will probably nitpick a bit about some people he didn't fight at the right time, but clearly, at this juncture, he's trying to fight whoever's available, and it's kind of, except for Pacquiao, of course, and it's hard to find competition right now for him.
Pacquiao would be able to, just my opinion, but who could beat him? And there's a weight issue, but I think Adrian Broner could beat him, and I'm not saying that Broner's a better fighter or even in that class. But I think Floyd could get over cocky if they fought, and I think I think Broner would have one of those nights where he just gets lucky. If he could survive early, he would just get lucky, and he could win.
Well, I don't think they'll ever fight because they're pals, and Broner would be, have to fight. If he fought him at 147, Broner doesn't do well at that weight. But
right.
The problem, Broner is interesting to me. I mean, I'm not very high on Adrian Broner. I'm not that enamored with him, but as a fighter, I think he's okay. But I think there are serious flaws. Number one, his volume of punching is always low. He has defensive issues, and so he might. He's got hand speed when he uses it, but I don't know. And they're such pals. I don't think they'll ever fight.
Right, they are friends, and I'm not saying Broner is that caliber. I'm saying he would be maybe
think he'd have a night against him. Yeah, maybe. It's possible.
And they are pals, but still, it's kind of like when in basketball, Kobe was coming up. He wanted to play Jordan. Told Jordan
right.
to beat him. Like, you can't beat pals in boxing. You can beat pals, but you got.
Now sometimes we see fighters that do know each other and outside the ring, and they get in and they'll fight each other because the money is right and all the rest of it. And then sometimes it even provides really good fights. But I think in their case, it's kind of unlikely.
I have this theory on Mayweather if he fought the Four Kings, and I think he would go 1-3, maybe 2-2 at best.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And, of course, you have to take it over a couple fights. So you can't say just one fight because, like, you'd have to say, well, if he fought Leonard 3 times, how would he do? Or if he fought Hagler, in my opinion. And I think if he had a 3-fight series with all of the Four Kings, he might beat one of them, and I'm not sure which. I know he would not beat Hearns, ever.
No.
I don't believe he would never beat Tommy Hearns because he doesn't punch hard enough to hurt Hearns, and that was the only way he could beat Tommy. And Tommy would stay outside all night and pick him apart with jabs and straight right hands. He might beat a Duran if Duran came in less than perfect shape, and he might beat him at 147, maybe. But Leonard, and they can't beat Hagler because Hagler's too big anyway for him.
Right.
So I think Duran would be his best hope to win 2 out of 3 if they all fought 3-fight, things. And it doesn't diminish Floyd Mayweather. It doesn't mean Mayweather's not a very good fighter. He's terrific. But the Four Kings were special, and I wrote in my book about Gil Clancy saying that, and he saw everything previous to that for 40 years, and he said, during the time he told me, he said that this is a special era, and I think those guys were special, and so it doesn't diminish Mayweather. It just means against that kind of elite, super elite competition, I don't know how well he would fare.
Right, and I'm not knocking Mayweather either. I just feel like those guys.
Right, but I don't think I agree with you. I can't see him beating all those people. It's just not going to happen.